Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock on a Friday, which means it's time for another video. And today, I'm going to be doing another deep dive. Now, if you don't know what the deep dives are, the idea is that I take a point in history, or I take a particular creator, or a particular company, and I examine their basically what they've done. I examine absolutely everything about them. We look at the history and we look at what they've achieved in Magic, what they've done, and more importantly, the business lessons that we can actually take from that particular subject matter. And since I've been doing these, they've become very, very popular, but there has been one company over and over again that people have asked me to do a deep dive on, and that is Alakazam Magic. So today, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a full deep dive into Alakazam Magic. I'm going to unearth and unpick everything. We're going to go right from the very beginning, and we're going to come right through to present day, and we're going to talk about the highs and the lows about Alakazam. We're going to talk exactly about what has made Alakazam so successful, because there's no bones about it, they are one of the most successful Magic producers and Magic dealerships in the world today. But that didn't happen overnight. It wasn't an overnight success. That happened with a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And we're going to go into that. We're going to examine everything. Now, before I start, there's a few things that you need to know. The first thing is, if you have a particular company or a particular subject matter that you want me to do a deep dive on, let me know down below. Honestly, it's really helpful when you guys say, hey, I'd love you to look at this, I'd love you to look at that. But don't expect it to happen immediately, because it does take a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. And honestly, the Alakazam video has taken probably, I started working on this about 4 weeks ago. Because you see, every now and then, a name comes along in Magic that becomes bigger than just a brand. A name that means consistency, creativity, and integrity. And if you've been around Magic any length of time, you'll know that that name is Alakazam. And I know this personally because I've worked for the last 5 years very, very closely with Peter and all of his team. And I know firsthand that for over 3 decades, Peter Nardi, Jenny, his wife, and his family have been building what started as a small UK dealership into one of the most respected, trusted, and beloved names in Magic. Not just in the UK, but across the world. They've weathered the evolution of Magic retail, from post-order catalogues and phone lines to digital downloads and streaming platforms, and they've done it all without losing their heart. This is the story of how Alakazam Magic became a global legacy. It's about family, it's about evolution, and most importantly, it's about what happens when passion meets persistence. Okay, so we're going to start at the very, very beginning. Chapter 1, the spark. And really, when we talk about the beginning, we have to talk about Peter Nardi. You see, Peter Nardi is Alakazam. But Peter Nardi's story doesn't begin in a boardroom or a business plan. It begins with a young man in Kent who loved Magic and music in equal measure. So Peter grew up in a small, close-knit Italian family, and his dad was a big influence, a practical man with a deep appreciation for skill and craft. Peter's early life was filled with creativity. He was a DJ. In fact, if you follow him on social media, you'll still see him spinning discs now, decades and decades later. And he performed. And when he got into Magic a little bit later on in life, he discovered that Magic wasn't just tricks, it was connection. Now, Peter was mentored earlier on by Jack Delvin, a name that pops up again and again when you talk about the roots of British Magic. Jack saw potential in Peter, not just as a performer, but as a thinker. Now, in Peter's own words, he wasn't trying to start a business. He was trying to create something that solved problems that magicians had. And that's where Alakazam began. Not as a company, but as an idea. A little workspace, a few designs, and a simple mission. Make great Magic accessible to absolutely everyone. You see, not everybody can be the greatest performer of all time, and Pete will be the first person to tell you he's probably not the greatest performer of all time. Now, he's still an incredible performer and an incredible creator, but Pete's superpower, as far as I'm concerned, was having a vision to create something that could be absolutely amazing. And here's the first lesson. We're going to look at lessons as well as we go through this. The best businesses are built by people who love the product more than profit. Look, here's the thing, and this is what you need to understand. If you want to get into business, if you want to be a self-employed magician, if you want to actually end up having some sort of role in this industry, you need to understand that a lot of the time, it's a passion project. You have to absolutely love what you're doing. You know, my background is sales, and I always tell anybody that I train in sales, if you don't believe in the product, it's going to be very difficult for you to sell it. It becomes a much easier proposition if you believe in the product that you're selling. Well, it's the same with setting up a business. You've got to love that business, because I'm telling you, when you set up a business, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And honestly, and I mean this, there's going to be times that you're going to want to quit. And the ones that keep going, the ones that persevere, the ones that move forward are the ones that have a passion for what they're doing. And I think anybody who's met Peter and his family will tell you that they are so passionate about magic. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 2. And let's talk about moving from a dealership to a brand. You see, Alakazam's first incarnation wasn't glamorous. It was Peter working from home, packing envelopes and answering phone calls between gigs. The early products were clever, practical and commercial. Things like Knock 'em Dead, which is still one of the best versions of the Quran deck ever. The Mind Spy wallet, which has just been re-released. The original WoW wallet. Every release carried Peter's philosophy. The effect had to be real-world workable, the method clean, and handling something a professional could actually use. And really, that's the kind of the trademark of Alakazam. They've always strived to bring out products that are usable by everybody, whilst at the same time powerful enough for a pro to use at any gig. And you see, this is a philosophy that worked, because before long, word spread. Performers started trusting Alakazam's name because every release worked exactly as advertised. No filler, no hype, just solid material. And you have to understand that this is a time where that wasn't always necessarily the case. Now, I know these days, we talk about dishonest trailers, and we talk about trailers promising one thing and actually achieving the other. But back when Alakazam first started, and they started releasing magic to the magic community, and they started selling products and working out of Pete's garage effectively, there were a lot of companies out there that would just release tat. I've talked before on this channel about how you have the mail order catalogs, and the problem with mail order catalogs is you would see something advertised. There wouldn't be a video demo or anything like that. You'd just see a little bit of a copy. You'd buy it. You'd wait a couple of weeks, and it'd turn up, and it'd be like nothing that you would expect. But Alakazam didn't do that. They became trusted because every release worked as advertised. And then a big moment happened. Along came Jenny, Peter's wife, who became the quiet powerhouse of Alakazam. Together, they ran the business as a true partnership, Pete on the creative side and Jenny keeping everything operational and sane. They were a small family running a company for magicians, and magicians loved them for it. Very important to note there that one of the most important things about Alakazam is they've always had that family feel to it. They've always had that, hey, we're a business that's run by a family. They coined the phrase later on, the Alakazam. And, anybody who follows Alakazam, anybody who is a supporter, a subscriber, a customer of Alakazam, honestly, you feel like you're part of a family. You really do. And it's so important to have that. I've tried to replicate that with my businesses, and have that family run vibe. And I can't stress also, and I speak about this from personal experience, I can't stress the importance of having somebody by your side that will keep everything kind of operational and running. I've got that with Sarah. You know, if Sarah wasn't there, the business would be bankrupt years ago, and I'd have a warehouse of really cool stuff. What Sarah does is she keeps me on track. I deal with the creative side, she deals with everything operational, and that's what you have there with Peter and Jenny. Now, by the early 2000s, Alakazam were becoming more than just a dealer. It was a brand, something magicians associated with quality and trust. Let's look at lesson number 2. What can we learn from the second chapter? Well, what we can effectively learn is that reputation isn't built on hype. It's built on consistency. You know, anybody can release a great product, but that's not going to make you a great creator. That's not going to turn you into a brand. What turns you into a brand that every single person trusts is consistency. Having banger after banger after banger come out and show again and again and again that you care about your customers. And that's something that Alakazam have done right from the very beginning. And effectively, if you want to become a successful business, if you want to become a successful magician, you need to do exactly the same thing as well. Okay, so let's move on to chapter 3, building a family empire. As the years went on, Alakazam started to grow. The business moved from a home setup to a dedicated HQ, and Peter began assembling a team of creative partners who would really take things to the next level. Now, there have been many, many names that have been associated with Alakazam over the years, and it would take too long in this story to tell you about every single name. I could do a video on people like Dave Loosely, all on its own. But in the context of talking about the rise of Alakazam, one name that I really have to bring up is Andy Smith. You see, as Alakazam started to grow, really that's where Andy Smith entered the story. I would say, and I've known Andy personally for a few years now, he is one of the most loyal, hard-working magicians you'll ever meet. Andy wasn't just an employee, he became an integral part of the creative background of Alakazam. He understood the brand's DNA. And the other thing about Andy, which is amazing, is he is also an incredible performer. He's an incredible creator. He's a performer, he's a creator, he's somebody that is so well read and understands every single branch and every single aspect of magic. Now, Andy has spoken about how every product goes through layers of testing and refinement before it's released. Alakazam doesn't rush things. They'd rather delay a trick than release something that doesn't meet their standards. And that's a rare thing in the magic industry, and I really mean that. You know, having been a reviewer for years, having now released magic and worked with most major companies, I see that a lot of companies do tend to rush things. I see tricks that I review that have come to market, and I know that they would have been a whole lot better if they'd been held back. Alakazam don't do that. They don't need to. They make sure that everything is perfect. And one thing that I've seen Alakazam do over and over again is really help support the creator. They take a good trick, they buy the rights to it, and they make it better. And Andy is a huge part of that. It's his attention to detail, this obsessive commitment to quality that helped Alakazam grow from a local business into one of the world's most respected dealers. The team dynamic at Alakazam has always felt more like a family than a company. They celebrate birthdays together, argue like siblings, treat customers like extended relatives. They treat them like who they are, the Alaka fam. And it's that human touch that's kept them relevant for 3 decades. So what can we learn from chapter 3? Well, treat your team like family and your customers will feel like family too. Honestly, if there's one lesson that embodies Alakazam, it's that lesson. They really have, made every single customer feel like they are part of this Alaka fam. And that makes customers loyal customers. And it's very, very important that you try to do the same thing with your clients, especially if you're a magician, a self-employed magician. How can you take this concept that Alakazam have built so well and integrate it into your own business as well? Because honestly, it's huge. Okay, chapter 4. Let's talk about Harry Nardi and the modern era beginning. I would say, and I don't know for sure, but I'm willing to bet for Peter the proudest moment in his journey came when his son Harry stepped into the business. Now, Harry grew up surrounded by magic. He was backstage, he was in the shop, he was in the warehouse, learning not just tricks, but the business of magic. And Peter didn't push him into it. Harry gravitated towards it naturally. And we all know that Harry was part of 4MG on Big Britain's Got Talent. Got through to the finals of Britain's Got Talent. If there's one thing that you can show that proves that Harry has chops, it's that. You see him posting on his social media all the time about going out to this gig or that gig. Harry has absolute definite skills. But beyond his skills as a magician, beyond his skills as a creator, when Harry joined Alakazam full-time, which was around about lockdown, something shifted. He didn't just want to uphold the family legacy. He wanted to evolve it. Now, here's the thing, and I've spoken to Pete about this, and he's talked about it before online numerous times, that, before Harry came along, Alakazam were kind of going through the motions. They grew very, very quickly, and they continued to grow. And then there came a point where it kind of almost stagnated. It's not that Alakazam went backwards. They didn't. They were still hugely respected, but they weren't doing what they needed to do to push forward. They weren't doing what they needed to do to take Alakazam to the next level. Pete was happy to just kind of tread water. But then Harry came along. And under Harry's influence, Alakazam started taking social media seriously. Their YouTube channel, their live streams, and their social presence all began to explode. Their presence on social media became, well, unbelievable. It really did. And I think this invigorated Pete as well, seeing what Harry was achieving within the business and seeing the effect that the social media was having on the business. I think invigorated Pete to help Alakazam go to levels that they'd never even been to before. Harry brought a new generation of magicians into the fold. He started hosting streams, demoing tricks, building rapport with younger fans who had never known a time before TikTok and Instagram. And here's the thing. Up until when Harry came along, Peter Nardi was Alakazam. That was a fact. And then over the last few years, I would say that Harry Nardi has become Alakazam, especially with younger people. I watch Alakazam at somewhere like the Blackpool Magic Convention. And, for years, people would come over to the stand and say hello to Pete because Pete was Alakazam. These days, you have people coming over to the stand, not really even knowing who Pete is. They want to speak to Harry because from their point of view, it's Harry that's the face of Alakazam. He's the one that's going out and demoing all of the tricks every single day. He's the one that's digging into the back catalogue, finding really old tricks and performing them to camera and creating an entire massive demand for these tricks that have not really sold for years. And what's beautiful is that Pete didn't resist it. He embraced it. He let Harry take the reins in areas he understood better. That's what makes Alakazam special as far as I'm concerned. Again, it's that family business that evolves without ego. During lockdown, Harry was instrumental in keeping Alakazam connected with its audience. While other companies paused or even shrank and dissipated, Alakazam engaged. They did weekly live shows, they did giveaways, community chats that made magicians feel they were part of something bigger. And they didn't just do that over lockdown, they continued to do it. It became part of their business strategy. It wasn't a bridge between old school Alakazam and new digital era. It really evolved Alakazam into an entire other level. And that leads us to lesson number 4. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's who you pass it to. And I've talked about this on the channel all the time in the past. What are you doing to sustain your legacy? From my point of view, as long as Ryland and Thea continue to love magic, and as long as Ryland and Thea continue to be a part of my business, that's who's going to get my business when they're older. And, I'm excited about that, passing that legacy on to them. Who do you pass your legacy on to in the years to come? That's a very important question that you need to ask yourself. Okay, let's talk about Chapter 5, and we have to talk about the digital pivot and Alakazam Unlimited. If ever there was a moment that marked Alakazam's transformation from dealer to digital powerhouse, it was the launch of Alakazam Unlimited. This wasn't just another subscription model, it was a streaming platform designed specifically for magicians, kind of like Netflix for magic learning and performance. Um, so Pete and Harry and Jamie Dawes are the masterminds behind Alakazam Unlimited. And Jamie Dawes got bought into Alakazam specifically to help create and expand Alakazam Unlimited. Jamie Dawes is an incredible performer, an incredible creator. And he was brought in. The goal wasn't to compete with other streaming services. It was to build a home for Alakazam fans. They wanted a place where magicians could access premium training, classic releases, and behind-the-scenes sessions all in one spot. And more importantly, they wanted it to feel personal. So like I say, that's where Jamie Dawes came in. Now, Jamie, if you don't know, is one of the most creative minds in British magic and has worked with Alakazam for years and years and years. Anybody who has watched the Tackling Terrifying Taboos, the live streams, will know how incredible Jamie is. Well, Jamie very quickly became a key part of the project. His cinematic storytelling and strong sense of brand helped define Alakazam's Unlimited's look and feel. And this right here, I'm genuinely certain that this was the point where Alakazam stopped being just a retailer and became an ecosystem, a platform that educated and entertained and inspired all under the same roof. And at the same time as setting up Alakazam Unlimited, or around about the same time, they redid their website. They had a very old, clunky website that Pete designed years ago that was put together with sellotape and duct tape and held together. And they completely redesigned the website with brand new systems and brand new concepts and everything. The website and Unlimited all kind of gelled together into, well, like one ecosystem, like I said. And it worked. Subscribers flooded in. The platform's success proved that when you stay true to your values but update your delivery, you win both old and new generations of magicians. And that's the important thing. You know, I've done so many of these deep dives now, and many, many times we'll look at why a business has failed. And it comes down to the fact that they haven't kept up with what's happening in the industry or even outside of the industry. You know, you look at L&L, who refused to really adapt and wanted to maintain the same business model. You look at somebody like Supreme, you know, the list goes on and on and on. Well, what Alakazam have done so well is they have adapted, they have grown. They could have very easily shut down in lockdown. They could have very easily just put the lights off and said, you know what, we'll come back when, you know, the world opens up again. But they didn't. They continued to grow. They continued to innovate. They continued to add new people to their platform, and it worked. So the lesson is adaptation isn't optional. The best magicians evolve. And that's really important. And you know, we talk about business lessons and what we can learn from these deep dives. The single most important business lesson that you can learn as a magician is what can you take from what's happening in the world and build into your business to help your business grow and evolve. Like from my point of view, I've just added a bunch of automation to my business, which is allowing me to do things that I've never done before. We've just integrated WhatsApp into my business. Now we're dealing with inquiries that we never thought we'd deal with before, but it's all automated. It's all automated and it's all organized and it's all built into the ecosystem behind my business. It would be easy for me not to do that. It would be easy for me to just sit down and rest on my laurels. But that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing. And it's not what you should be doing either. It's really important to evolve. Look at what's happening and don't be the last person to take something new and bring it on board. And that's kind of what Alakazam have been doing right from the very beginning. Okay, we move on to chapter 6, which is where we have to talk about the rise of Alakazam USA. Because you see, just when most long-established companies would be thinking about slowing down, the Nardis decided to take on something bigger, America. Now, for years, Alakazam had a huge US following. Magicians loved their products, but they had to wait weeks for shipping. And Pete and Harry, they tried so many different things in the past. I remember many, many years ago, there was a specific website for Alakazam America. At one point, they were doing drop shipping and they were having a company ship their products for them. But that company could not match the quality control and the customer service that Alakazam held so dear. And so they came to a realization that the only way that they could make America work for Alakazam was if they had somebody there to run it. And that's where Chris James came on board. The idea of a dedicated US base suddenly made sense. Now, Chris, as you know, has quietly been making a name for himself as one of the top creators in Magic. Chris is a creative powerhouse. He has the ability to take somebody's trick and come up with ideas with it that even the original creator wouldn't have thought of. And I know that because he's done that time and time again with effects that I've released. Chris has the same passion and standards that define Alakazam UK. He didn't just open a warehouse, he created an American version of the Alakazam. Same brand values, same personal touch, just closer to their stateside customers. Now, setting up Alakazam USA wasn't easy. There were import regulations, distribution headaches, time zone chaos, but they did it. They did it because Peter and Harry and Chris believed that proximity builds trust. And when that first shipment went out for an American address, it felt like the company had taken a massive step into his next chapter. And that is so important. You know, how do you grow? How do you grow and how do you continue to create sustained growth? You do so by looking for other opportunities and setting up a hub in America is a huge, huge step forward to be able to basically dominate the magic industry globally. But there's something you need to understand. It's a risk. You know, setting up Alakazam HQ in America was a risk. We look at it now and we go, oh, well, that's a huge success. They've probably got as many, if not more, customers in America than they have in the UK. And that happened in the last year or two since setting up Alakazam USA. But it could very easily not have worked. It could have very easily wiped out Alakazam because they would have spent so much money and literally ended up nowhere. They took a huge risk, but the risk paid off. Today, Alakazam USA isn't just a shipping hub. It's a community center for American magicians. Chris is doing things with Alakazam USA that I just never thought were possible. He's coming in 7 days a week. He's determined to make sure that the speed of delivery and the customer service matches, if not exceeds, UK operations. And it's proof that a small shop from Ashford can become a global network built entirely on relationships. So what lesson can we learn from this? Well, the most important lesson that you can learn from here is you have to take risks as a business owner. Now, look, Alakazam have took many risks over the course of their lifespan. Many, many, many risks. Just setting up the business initially was a risk. But I would say that the biggest risk that they've ever taken was opening Alakazam USA. But the thing is, they wouldn't be where they are now if it wasn't for taking that risk. And here's the thing. Any business owner will tell you, any entrepreneur will tell you that if you want to succeed, if you want to get better, if you want to improve, if you want your business to grow, if you want sustained growth, you have to take risks. I've taken tons of risks during the course of my career. Have they all paid off? No, absolutely not. They haven't. A lot of them haven't, in all honesty. But you know what? I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't taken risks, because the risks that have paid off, they've paid off big time. And you're never going to be a risk taker in business and have every single risk work out 100% of the time. You're just not. But if you refuse to ever take any risk, you're going to stagnate. You're never going to go beyond a certain level. So the big piece of advice I can give you here is when a risk presents itself, when an opportunity presents itself and you look at it and you go, well, that could be huge, it could also be a little bit risky, then ask yourself a question: what's the best case scenario and what's the worst case scenario? And if you can live with the worst case scenario, for the worst possible thing happens and you can live with that, and yet the best case scenario would lead to a better situation for you and your business, then go for it. But don't be one of those people that are scared of moving forward, because honestly, if you're not moving forward, then you're moving backward. Okay, on to Chapter 7, Inside Alakazam HQ. Back in the UK, the heart of Alakazam still beats at his headquarters. Part showroom, part studio, part family kitchen. And at the centre of it all is Pete and Harry and Andy and Emma. I've talked about Andy. Andy's been with Alakazam for decades, and his fingerprints on almost every trick that they've produced. He's the one who stress tests routines, refines instructions, and ensures that what the customers get is bulletproof. I interviewed Andy a few years ago, and he said something that I think sums up the company perfectly. He said, when he was talking about Alakazam, we're not trying to be the biggest. We're trying to be the best for the people who trust us. At Alakazam, nothing is rushed. Every routine is handled, performed, and reworked until everyone's happy. That's why magicians still open an Alakazam box and know it's going to be good. And it's not about the tricks. It's not just about the tricks. It's about laughter in the workshop, the constant kettle boiling, the fact that Peter still personally checks orders. That authenticity can't be faked. You know, when businesses grow to a certain level, they become almost impersonal. But what Alakazam have managed to do is they've managed to become bigger. They've become huge. They've become global. However, they've still kept that family vibe. You know, we check out the Alakazam Live on a Tuesday, and we see Pete there with somebody like Wayne or somebody like Harry, and they're laughing and they're joking. You watch the review show on a Sunday and you see Pete sitting there with Jamie or Harry, and you just see how much fun these people are having, and you see how you know, it's almost intangible. People are drawn to Alakazam partly because everyone looks like they're having so much fun. Everyone's really nice. And I think that's one of the most important lessons. True magic happens behind the scenes. You know, it's really important that you get the behind the scenes stuff right. No one's going to buy into a company where everyone looks like they're not having a good time. The infrastructure and what happens behind the scenes is more important than everything. Okay, let's go into Chapter 8, the convention and the future. If you want proof that Alakazam is still growing, look no further to their first convention, announced for May 2026. Now, this isn't just a cash grab event. I've spoken to Harry and Pete about this. It's a thank you to the community. Peter and Harry wanted to bring everyone who supported them together under one roof. Creators, customers, friends, and fans. You know, I got a chance to interview them about the convention. And they spoke about wanting the day to feel intimate, less like a trade show, more like a family reunion. Yeah, there's going to be lectures from Alakazam regulars. There's going to be exclusive releases. There's going to be a gala show and the trademark Nardi hospitality. And it's all taking place in a cinema. The tiered seating is going to probably make it the best lecture experience that we've ever seen at a convention. It's going to be absolutely incredible. But what this convention represents is bigger than a date on the calendar. It's proof that Alakazam is still pushing forward. From garage beginnings to global stages, they've never lost that hunger to connect. And you can feel it, the excitement in their voices, their pride, the joy of creating something new. It's not just nostalgia, it's momentum. And, you know, I get a chance to speak to Pete an awful lot. I get a chance to speak to Harry an awful lot. I interview them quite a lot for this channel. And one thing that I see over and over again is excitement. After all these years, nobody would blame Pete for just being fed up of everything. You know, let's be clear. I imagine Pete Nardi could retire tomorrow and never pick up his wand again and be perfectly happy. But he doesn't. That's not his style. That's not Alakazam's style. Alakazam's style to continue to push forward, continue to evolve, continue to grow. And, you see that in everything they do. They don't need to do a convention. It's not like doing a convention is going to make them a bigger business. They've got to a point now where they're bigger than ever before. But it's things like the convention that just show how much they're dedicated to push forward, how much they're dedicated to take things in a completely different direction, how much they're dedicated to stand out head and shoulders above everyone else. You have to continue to grow. If, like I said right at the very beginning of this video, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards. If you're not aiming to push forwards, you're going backwards. And the convention is a perfect example of how they constantly push forward. So the lesson is, do you push forward with your business? Have you stagnated? And if you have, what can you do about it? What can you do to push your business forward? What can you do to make a statement to your customers? What can you do to show your customers you're the best in your industry? Chapter 9, Print by Magic. Probably the latest thing to happen to Alakazam is their acquisition of Print by Magic. Now, look, since lockdown, Alakazam have always tried to push forward. This isn't the first acquisition that they've had. They bought Ace Magic Studio into the fold, and they combined Ace Magic Studio with Alakazam. That didn't necessarily work out as well as they hoped. I mean, they ended up having some great products that they could add to their roster of tricks, and obviously they ended up with Steve-O Watson as a part of Alakazam, building the gimmicks, and that's all well and good. But I think they probably wanted more with Ace Magic Studio than what happened, and that wasn't the case, and that's absolutely fine, because the thing is, like I said before, Pete Nardi, Harry Nardi, Alakazam, they're prepared to take risks. They want to take risks. Acquiring a business is taking a risk, and they've done it again now. They've done it with Print by Magic. Now, Print by Magic was a separate company that Alakazam have literally taken lock, stock, and bought it into their unit. So now they have the ability to print their own playing cards. Now, to be clear, this is huge. This is probably bigger than you actually think it is, because it's not just a case of, oh, this is another option we can now offer our customers. This gives them the ability to not have to outsource the majority of things that they need to do within their business. You see, they're constantly creating tricks which require prototypes, and those prototypes involve reaching out and having cards printed. Well, now they can do that themselves in an hour. So now, rather than having to wait a week for a prototype from a different company and having one person design it and then have another person print it and have it delivered back to Ashford, now, if they've got an idea for an effect, or they're working with a creator and that creator has an idea for effect, within an hour, they've got a prototype ready to go, up and running, and things are moving a lot quicker because of that. If they have an idea for a trick, like a packet trick, for example, they don't have to outsource it. They can do it in-house. But it also is another thing that they can offer their customers. It's another thing that they can do that other dealers can't do. Look, we talk about how big somewhere like Penguin Magic is. We talk about how big somewhere like Vanishing Ink is. And they're huge. But can they do this? Can they offer in-house printing, literally turn around within an hour? Can they offer having someone send in their business card and have it printed on a pack of cards and then delivered back to them next day delivery? No, they can't. They can't offer that. What Alakazam are doing here is they are positioning themselves as the market leader by having things within the infrastructure of their business that make them the market leader. It's little things like this that are a huge difference. And again, it's a risk. Do you think it's a risk buying a company, bringing all the equipment when you have no idea how it works in-house? Do you think it's a risk hiring a new full-time member of staff to run that, not knowing what the demand is like, not knowing if there's going to be even a demand there, not knowing how it's going to resonate with the Magic community? Absolutely, that is a massive risk. And it's still early days, but you see that paying off. And if there's one thing that encapsulates everything I've talked about in this video, it's this. The Nardis, Alakazam, They are not afraid to take risk. I've said it before. We've talked about this in various other chapters, but it's true. They're not afraid to take risks. Look, this business, Print by Magic, was available for anyone to buy. It's Alakazam that bought it. It's Alakazam that took that risk. Anyone else could have made an offer, but they didn't. Alakazam did. And it positions them as bigger than anyone else. And it's that, more than anything else, it's that mindset that has defined their success. And it's this mindset that really Harry has brought into the industry and has brought into Alakazam. And I'm not saying something that I wouldn't say to Pete to his face, but you know, one of the biggest factors to making Alakazam as big as it is today. And to be clear, they shift more magic than almost any magic shop in the world. They are rapidly on their way to becoming the #1 magic shop in the world globally. And they've done it through taking risks, believing in themselves, valuing their customers, and they've done it while still keeping their core values intact. And that's incredible. It really is. And it's something that most other magic companies can't even touch. Chapter 10, the final chapter, the legacy of Alakazam. So, what do we take from all this? How does a small family shop become one of the most trusted names in magic and stay that way for over 30 years? The answer is simple. They never stopped caring. Pete Nardi built Alakazam on honesty and passion. Jenny kept it organised and grounded. Andy Smith and the rest of the team that have been in and out of Alakazam over the years helped refine every idea into something real. Harry came out of nowhere like a dynamo and brought the next generation to life online. Jamie Dawes gave the brand its cinematic storytelling voice. Chris James carried the torch across the Atlantic. And every single person with Alakazam, every single person has done something to take that company to the next level. It's now bigger than Peter Nardi. And at one point it wasn't, but now it is. Each person has added a new chapter, and together they've created something bigger than any one of them could have done alone. Alakazam's legacy isn't just about the tricks they've sold, it's about the trust they've built. Magicians around the world know that when they buy from Alakazam, they're buying from people who care about the art as much as they do. And that's the real magic. Not the sleights, not the secrets, but the sincerity. So the final lesson from all of this is that success isn't a trick. It's a lifetime routine built on passion, people, and persistence. If you want to be successful, if you want to take things to an entire other level, you have to have passion, because without passion, you have nothing. You have to have a desire to succeed, but it has to be more than a desire. It has to be something that you can feel in every single fiber of your being. And then you have to surround yourself with people that have that same passion, that have bought into the vision that you have. And then finally, you have to persevere, because when you are an entrepreneur, like I said before, there's highs, lows, ups, downs, ebb, flows. It's not going to be smooth sailing. It's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But not everybody does it. If you want to be a success, then all you have to do is follow Alakazam's blueprint and apply it to your own business. So that's the story. From Pete's garage in Kent to warehouses in California, from VHS tapes and little small printed out pieces of paper, to streaming platforms, from a local dealer to an international legacy. Alakazam Magic stands as proof that in an industry built on illusion, authenticity still wins. Because when you love what you do, when you treat people right, and when you keep evolving, the magic never fades. That is the final lesson.